Hello, hello, guys. Welcome back to the HHH podcast. We are here today with a special episode. We are here with the second part of the episode that I recorded with Elvis Escobar from Enter the Lab from, what was it, on Friday night, I believe it was. I did want to drop this part 2, maybe on Monday or Tuesday, but long story short, I just not got my computer set back up, so we are good to go in that regard, so I'm able to edit and get that uploaded here for you guys today. So apologies for the delay on that, but I think you guys will enjoy the episode still nonetheless. It's still pretty relevant. We touched base on a lot of the current topics, the big news items. Obviously, Vince McMahon retiring, the state of WWE going forward with Triple H as the head of creative, WWE's TV14 rating going forward at some point. We even touched on a few random topics. I believe at one point we even referenced, we spoke about Eric Bischoff. That's because my ADD brain just goes various places. When you mention a certain word or certain things, I just think of 5 different things. Yeah, we talked about MJF, AEW again. So a lot of variety of things here. It was just kind of to get Elvis's mindset and his perspective for the major news items, like I said, that's going on in the world of professional wrestling today. So if you hear us talking about either the build to SummerSlam or what we think may happen at SummerSlam or anything in that regard, that is because, like I said, we recorded this on Friday night after SmackDown, which was obviously before SummerSlam. But I hope you guys definitely enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you guys think. Hit me up on Twitter at ASHMANNS, the show's Twitter page at Kagash Podcast _ and of course I've mentioned before on TikTok at Kagash Podcast. But you guys can also hit up Elvis Escobar on Twitter. I believe it's at Elvis Escobar, and then Enter the Lab on Twitter as well at Enter the Lab. So with all of that out of the way, guys, we will dive right into the episode here with good old Elvis. Thank you again, Elvis, for joining the show, and I hope you guys enjoy. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Kick-Ass Podcast. Tonight we are here with a very, very special episode. One may even call it stupendous if it was during WrestleMania season itself. But it's still a monument in my opinion. We have good old Elvis Escobar from Enter the Lab joining us. He is officially the first guest on the Kick-Ass Podcast. So thank you so much, and welcome.
First of all, I'm honored to be the first guest on it because since the first episode of Kick-Ass, I don't know about your other listeners or viewers, but I know I've listened to at least every episode, if not maybe missed one or half an episode. So I'm going to take credit and say that I deserve to be the first guest on this podcast. I'm going to be confident in that, and thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure. You're awesome. You're amazing, and I love listening to this podcast, so I'm glad to be on it.
Dude, no, I thank you so much. I truly appreciate you. You have been a longtime supporter since day one, so it was only fitting that you were my first guest. Like I told you, it was only right. So I wanted to make sure I stuck to that. But I definitely want to let you go ahead and plug your show now, Enter the Lab, because as you listen to mine, I listen to yours. You and Ford do a fantastic job. I do miss Ben on there, but I appreciate, all his new additions to his life, having a newborn baby and all that. So I do like when he's able to pop on, but definitely plug your show, dude, before we get into the meat and potatoes of everything.
Yeah, so I'll be simple and quick. Obviously, we started off as the utility players with 4 people. Life evolves, but I'm glad that got my upkick into the podcast game, was able to meet great people like yourself. Now we evolved into Enter the Lab with myself and Fort Sama, my co-host, and man, we're about 8 months into Enter the Lab, and we are, we have more subscribers more than ever. We have more views. We're getting more and more guests on it. And we have people guest for August, whether it's sports, whether it's business, whether it's music. So we have 3 guests in the month of August that we're very excited about. So, if you want to find us, we're on every platform. Twitter, Enter the Lab. Instagram, Enter the Lab. YouTube channel, Enter the Lab. Like I said, we both appreciate me having be on this podcast on the behalf of Enter the Lab. So I'm excited to talk wrestling because that's all we talk about since meeting you. about 8 months ago. So I'm excited
Dude.
about talking about SummerSlam tonight.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. And like I said, we definitely will get into SummerSlam, but I definitely want to pick your brain before we get into the card itself because a lot of shit has happened in the wrestling world. But definitely, guys, check out Enter the Lab. And he said, obviously, they are available on all streaming platforms. But if I can kind of throw my little 2 cents out there, I prefer the YouTube because I love watching you guys. Y'all are very entertaining. And it's just something different when you get that visual aspect of it as well. It's just another appreciation. So yeah, like I said, Enter the Lab is definitely good shit, and I definitely appreciate you being on here. So thank you again. But like I said, I do want your opinion on a lot of shit that's happened in the wrestling world, man. Before we head into SummerSlam,
Been busy in the wrestling industry.
Yeah, to say the least, and within a pretty short time frame. So we'll obviously start with the biggest news that there is that kind of like is pretty much like an umbrella for everything. We'll kind of trickle down to the rest, but that of course being Vince McMahon himself retiring, stepping aside from WWE completely, whatever you want to call it. He officially obviously stated himself via Twitter, which I kind of want your 2 cents on that really quick too. Just the announcement coming on Twitter itself, and of course with the allegations that have been made privy to us via the Wall Street Journal, the anonymous email that was sent, all that good stuff. Well, obviously not good stuff, but all that stuff that's there. But yeah, I'll read his tweet out really quick and then kind of get your 2 cents on that, and then we'll kind of go from there. But Vince officially tweeted on July 22nd at 4:05 p.m. Crazy, just a random Friday afternoon. He stated, at 77, time for me to retire. Thank you, WWE Universe. Then, now, forever together. Hashtag WWE. Hashtag thankful. There were, of course, follow-up tweets after that, but we'll just kind of stop there. Elvis, my friend, where are you at with this?
All right. So, to answer this question, you have to know Vince McMahon, the person, the businessman, and the narcissist. Where the fact that, I think you said it, was on previous episodes, the fact that he wasn't able to retire in the ring with a formal promo, he had to, delegate it to Twitter. I think you said the fact that if you would have told me, he'd be retiring or stepping down on Twitter would be mind blowing, and it's true. I think it wasn't his decision. For once in his own company in WWE, you saw a man so powerful, so rightfully so egotistical and in control of his own company that this was the one and last decision that he couldn't make himself. He couldn't wait for Raw to make an announcement or SmackDown or a pay-per-view or make this vignette. It was decided for him, either Nick Khan or maybe the shareholders or the other directors, was this needs to be done ASAP. Yeah. And it's funny because it's a beautiful thing, I think. I think it's very poetic that he wasn't able to go out the way he wanted to. And he's been a madman since I've been watching wrestling, in the late 90s, and he's been in the scene. He's been, I related to Quentin Tarantino, where he's my favorite director and film writer. And, Quentin always puts himself in every movie in a subliminal way. And he's Quentin times 100. He loves to be in the limelight, but also gets the credit. So he's an egotistical maniac. I love that he wasn't able to go out in his own way, because guess what? He's made plenty of mistakes, like we, nobody's perfect, as you say on this podcast a lot. But, we are a podcast of judging people and talking about people. So, let's hide the defense mechanisms and all that. Let's get right into it. He's somebody that hasn't been the most noble person or human or husband or father probably for the last 20, 30 years. He's been running a multi-million and now billion-dollar company.
Crazy.
I love that. I don't love that it's happened to him because it's unfortunate, but the fact that it happened the way it did was, your darkness shines in the light. It all caught up to him at the end of the day. Don't want to dwell on it. Don't want to, kick a man while he's down, etc. as my cat kind of pees everywhere near me. Anyway, so I don't want to dwell on it because you don't want to be that person. And like Nick Khan, tweeted while Vince McMahon was eating crow, he tweeted that as he was the longest reigning, and then you proved to it that it wasn't
we'll get
true.
To that.
Exactly. Sure. But overall, it just I have a hot take, and I'll share it in a minute after you go. But I want to set the podcast world on fire after you. I want to hear a kind of follow up from what I said on you.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of right there with you. I think it kind of backtracking towards the beginning of what you were saying there. It's still just mind blowing to me, first of all, that it happened on Twitter. And I don't know why, for me, that's so pressing as it is and stands out as much as it is. But the fact that I think that we didn't get any type of real acknowledgement besides, of course, Stephanie opening SmackDown that Friday night, she came out there. And the fans, to her credit, they initiated the Thank You Vince chant prior to her even getting there. She referenced it herself saying, hold on, guys, I was going to get there or whatever she said. It's just, I think that's very telling. And I think, as a lot of other people have stated too, before I did myself, the fact that it happened so abruptly and kind of like what you were saying there as well, time-wise, it's just, that's very telling as well. Someone forced him out, and I think he got the luxury of calling it a retirement and not whatever else it most likely or it probably will end up being, because wherever there's smoke, there's fire. And I hate to say that because I don't like to wish any ill on anyone. I mean, this man, but this is a whole other topic in and of itself, but for the longest time, and I referenced it in one of my other podcasts, I didn't know wrestling existed outside of WWE, as crazy as that sounds. But for me, growing up really before the internet was a big thing, I only knew WWE. Even the magazines I got were WWE's Raw and SmackDown versions. It was nothing outside. When I saw my first magazine, actual Pro or Pro Wrestling Illustrated and Food Line or something, I was blown the fuck away, dude. I was like, wait, what? All these other wrestlers from Japan and everything. So yeah, the way he went out, I think is pretty telling in and of itself. And the fact that it happened right before Summerslam, which is obviously we'll be getting into later on. And then I think more so telling is right before they went back to Madison Square Garden on Raw this past Monday. I think that's very, very telling as well. Obviously
going home. Isn't that crazy how it all comes full circle, going back to where he made his money?
And I think for me, I know there has been, I guess, a couple more developments to the story this week, but nothing, and not to downplay anything, but nothing too groundbreaking, or it's nothing that we didn't already know existed dropped this week. So still looking back on it, the fact that he didn't appear on Madison Square Garden is still kind of shocking to me, but I will throw it back to you. I'm ready to hear this hot take and anything else you want to comment on there.
All right. So I'm going to say two quotes, and it's from two different human beings in life. One of them is a real person. One of them is a fiction. So the first quote I'll have to say, and I didn't prepare this. I Googled this on spot.
I love it.
Enter the lab. We like to do things organically and raw as we flow in conversation. So the first quote is, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And that's who Vince McMahon has become. My second quote is in relation to, but it's more simple in the most simplistic words, and it's in the words of Kurt Cobain. It's better to burn out than fade away.
Ooh. Bro.
Right?
Bro.
So that's what happened to Vince McMahon. His legacy for years is that, he's 70, 80 years old, whatever he is, and he's created so much. I get it. Now here comes my little hot take and my little controversy is I've never heard, or if I have, I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think Vince McMahon is any type of genius. I don't think he's a creative genius. I don't think he's, and it made me realize today, I was driving around, and this is the first time I thought about it, was he's a, and put it reference into sports. That's how I know how to reference things is James Harden is a great scorer and great points per game. Why is he? I'm a Nets fan. He's been on the Nets for a year and a half, or he was for a complete year total. But why was he a great scorer? Was because he could put up a lot of shots. Vince McMahon, I think, in my opinion, over the last 30 years, 30, 40 years, I think he is a guy that puts up a lot of shots. He invests a lot of time, a lot of effort. He's a great businessman, but I think he's limited in the creativity. I think if you give anybody or most people the amount of time, effort, and situations to develop characters, to do promos, you give somebody 100 shots, you give somebody 30 shots a game, eventually, 5 are going to look really, really good. And then 25 of the 30 is going to look really bad. But what do you focus on mostly? The 5 that were really good. I take it back further. In the 90s, why the WWE is the WWE now is because of the 90s. And you go back. Who was running the WWE in the 90s? Shawn Michaels. Can we all say that Shawn Michaels would have been exactly what he is and would have been without Vince? Most likely. The Rock most likely would have been what he is or would have been without Vince. Not saying totally, but I'm just, not an extreme. Stone Cold, the guys that just had it. The one guy that I think that Vince had an impact on over the last 30 years is The Undertaker. And I give him that. I give him The Undertaker. I give him the creativity, the vignettes, the story, everything, the character. That was once in a lifetime type stuff. But I think what kept him looking like a genius, The Rock, Stone Cold, Shawn Michaels, Triple H. Like, are you kidding me? Those guys are LeBron James, Michael Jordan, John Morant. Those are guys that just, I don't care what league they're in. They're going to, right? No matter what league he's in, you're going to watch. Like I said, I don't want to be too extreme where it's like, oh, I'm discrediting Vince, and he's not as he's a great businessman. But I think we've been giving him too much credit over the years for creativity and all this. Oh, he's a genius. Yeah, you look like a genius if you strike gold 1 out of every 10 times. Baseball's the same thing. You're a Hall of Famer if you get 3 hits out of every 10. That means you fail 70% of the time, but you don't focus on the 70, you focus on the 30. So I was thinking in my car today, I was like, Vince McMahon, the history of him getting his family business with his father and all that, I will not question that. I do not. But when it comes to the creative and post 2022 or 2002 and on, John Cena, obviously, that would be probably the second bridge to the Attitude Era. I don't think he's as creative as we think. And that's my hard take. And I would love for people to DM Ashley and let's talk about it. But we're about to see something special, I think, in the Triple H, Helmsley McMahon era. And I'm excited about that. Sorry to be long-winded.
No, dude, it was fascinating. I took a couple of notes there. So I wouldn't even say that I disagree with you. It's definitely an interesting take. So would you credit just the talent then? And would you give him credit in at least providing the platform, obviously, and then just allowing and being at least smart enough, knowing and allowing the talent, seeing someone like Stone Cold, because obviously when Stone Cold came into WWF, he came in as Stunning Steve Austin and was partnered up with Ted DiBiase, Ringmaster, all that shit, Something changed and Vince pretty much said, fuck it, and let Stone Cold be Stone Cold. And it was a slow burn, but then once the momentum started building, it was kind of like a tumbleweed. Once it got bigger and bigger and bigger, it just got to the point where you couldn't ignore it. So is your take where you probably give him more credit as seeing, okay, bam, like this guy probably has something. Let him take off and see where it goes, and let me give him the platform. Is that where you're kind of coming at? Or who would you give the credit to? Just the talent themselves then?
So and that's a great question and great perspective. What I'm basing my opinion on is what I've heard. if you watched WWE like documentaries, whether it was on like A&E or whatever it was on, when they did the Stone Cold documentary, did you hear the names and the gimmicks that they wanted to give Steve Austin in the beginning?
One of them was like, God, it was like something like ice pick or like ice
Bro,
something.
awful.
Like, oh my God.
He
Like,
came
it's
to
just the
them
worst
and he
shit.
said it. He
Aqua
came to them,
something.
was like, "Hey, I'm thinking of doing something like a cold whatever, like a killer." And they came to him with 5 names that were
Just
like an exaggeration on the wordplay. It wasn't a character. It was, you're going to be Dr. Freeze. You're going to be
yeah, like just
the
bizarre
cold
shit.
killer. Like, yes, it was the team and Vince that okayed it, but like, you got to give the credit to the goats. Stone Cold doesn't get to the goat status because of Vince solely, nor does he get to the GOAT status of just himself. But man, you gotta, if you understand the personality, listening and watching these documentaries and listening to them now, like, you know, these are type A personalities where Shawn Michaels was fighting with Vince McMahon on every decision in the 90s. Every decision. He was the first person to check him every single event or major decision. So to give Vince McMahon this holy grail of like, yes, the buck stopped with him, but also these fucking, imagine having the USA Olympic team in 92. And like I said, the only way I could relate this is sports. Like, you have Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley, you have all these all-stars. Like, of course I'm going to agree with what they have to say because they know a lot more than me. They're doing the grind as much. All I'm doing is checking the boxes. Mm-hmm. So how I look at it, maybe he's been senile in the last 10 years, but the product, we could all agree, I think, has been awful.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah.
Awful,
There's no question
right?
about that. There's no question about that. And the first note that I took down when you were going on your hot take there was I don't know, and I don't know the specifics. I just saw this specific clip. And I had heard it before, but it was really reiterated and kind of refreshed in my memory recently. And that was Chris Jericho did an interview recently, and you can see the interview on YouTube. Gosh, I may even look it up later on. But he was asked about everything that's happening with Vince McMahon, and I think this was dropped right before he stepped down or retired officially. And he brought up the fact that Vince is a very good, kind of like a Paul Heyman in one aspect. To me, Paul Heyman was a very good guy who accentuated the positive and would hide the negative for pretty much any character that he had, especially in ECW, obviously. And Chris Jericho said essentially that's what Vince McMahon is great at doing. Chris brought Vince the whole idea of Y2J and debuting and having a I don't know if you remember back when Chris Jericho first debuted back in WWF.
I do remember.
Yeah,
legendary, so well thought out.
So great. So long story short, Jericho was at a post office or he was dropping mail off or something. You probably already heard the story.
Yep.
He looked up, it's on the countdown clock. He was like, man, that's a great way for someone to debut. He was like, oh shit, essentially. That's a great way for me to debut. So he gave Vince that idea, and Vince was like, yeah, we can do that, but what if we had the countdown clock expire right during the middle of The Rock's promo? Which is
I've watched that
brilliant.
so many times.
Yeah, right? And it gives me goosebumps every time I see it. It was just brilliant. And Jericho says, if he could go back, he wouldn't do so many facial expressions and things like that. But
I loved all the facial.
I loved it too. Yeah.
Everything about that was brilliant. The high pony, yes.
Yeah. It's great. But so Jericho said, long story short, Jericho said that Vince McMahon is the type of guy where if you give him an idea that's good, he can make it great or even spectacular. So that's why when you were talking earlier, that was the first thing I wrote down, because like, man, like you're probably spot on there. And I think where he may be next level human is business aspect, because he had the foresight to take the company public when he did. He had the foresight to, yes, even though he was partially forced with the whole lawsuit with the World Wildlife Fund, he used that as a business approach and had the slogan "Get the F out" and all that shit right around the time when they went public, which essentially made him and the company a billionaire at this point. So yeah, man. And I think when you mentioned the Undertaker, that obviously to me is his best best character, hands down. He legitimately came up with the legit character itself, called Mark Calloway on the phone, was like, hey, blah, blah, blah. And the rest
And
is
before that, he wanted it to be an egg. So there
yeah,
was
right,
like, it was like kind of like,
right,
yes, he
right.
wound up being good with it, but it was like, damn, he really
Yeah.
wanted this part of it.
Yeah. So, but you mentioned another name, and I'm gonna hold off on the name because I know I mean I'm not on a time crunch, but and we can break this up if we need to
Yeah.
show lengthwise, but I have to ask you, who is your GOAT? Who is your greatest of all time? And I
So
say that because you said a name and it sparked that for me. So
yeah.
not to put
So
you on the spot.
yeah. No, I mean, that's everybody's Mount Rushmore, and I can only speak for myself where we tend to be a product of who we watch and, what impacts us at our early age. So, born in 1989, I started watching wrestling hardcore in 98, 99, but have the earliest memory in 96.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I remember the Razor Ramones, the Shawn Michaels early, In Your House, all that, played the video games when I was super young, like 6, 7, 8 years old. My kind of Mount Rushmore would be something like Stone Cold, The Rock, Shawn Michaels, and The Undertaker. But and it's crazy because the obvious answer for me, it's like, it's hard to pick between Stone Cold and The Rock. For me, they did something different for me in my childhood and still when I watch them now. So it's almost like they cancel out in a weird way for me.
Yeah.
And then like the next one I would go to, the third one, it would be Shawn Michaels. I loved everything about Shawn Michaels. I think the first magazine that I owned, I hope I still have it at my mom's house back in New York. It was a Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and it was torn shreds when I last checked on it like 20 years ago. But I bought this at the local supermarket in like 96. And that's, I think, was more memorable to me, like that nostalgic feel was Shawn Michaels was amazing. Like, I don't know, he was the first memory. He was before Stone Cold and before The Rock. So like that was that first memory of like just having that flamboyant style, comfortable in his own skin. You didn't know if he was, back in the 90s, different. Was he gay? Was he, was he too flamboyant? It was weird.
With the championship.
Exactly. It was kind of weird. It was like he's wearing earrings. He's got the mullet. He's wearing hearts. He's comfortable in his own skin. It was very different as a young kid, under the age of 10. And every time I'm asked this question or I think about this question, I somehow always go to Shawn Michaels, and he is the best seller in wrestling history. Man, you watch some of his sells, it's amazing. Like whether it's far-fetched and over the top,
like
or
with Hulk Hogan at SummerSlam.
Yeah, exactly. Like you appreciate the extreme, but you also appreciate the subtleness. And man, he's a human. He battled his enemies like anybody else, and he came back. He had 2 or 3 comebacks. And Shawn Michaels, man, I would say is my favorite wrestler, pure wrestler of all time, whether it across the board, when you're given a report on each, in the ring, outside, the flair, impactful, it would have to be that. Obviously, The Rock and Stone Cold, to me, they even each other out because they were both monumental in my life, but at the same time. So I'm like, all right, cancel them out. I can't pick one of the two. I'm going to choose Shawn.
And real quick before I hit on Shawn, isn't it mind-blowing that, first of all, you and I both grew up, because I was born in 91, so you and I both grew up in an era where we had 2 massive megastars in The Rock and Stone Cold active at the exact same time. And it's crazy to think about now, but like if you're listening to this and you weren't alive during that time frame, they were massive. Like they were they were actual superstars. They transcended the business. Even if you didn't watch wrestling, you knew who Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock were. You knew at least one of their catch lines. You knew about them, right? So it's crazy to think about that. Yeah, like they were active at the exact same time. But I'm actually kind of surprised by your answer there, because that legitimately is my answer, and almost like word for word, like a lot of things that you said there. Shawn Michaels. I think personally, my first favorite and the first wrestler who really like grabbed me was Jeff Hardy. And that was because I was that different kid in high school or in middle school, especially like once eighth grade.
I've always felt that from you
Yeah,
since
like dude,
knowing you.
I was that kid who like wore like the fishnets, the big trip
Hmm.
pants. Like I was that crazy kid. Like you didn't really know. I mean, I wasn't crazy, but like it was weird because like I looked like I was like that. Oh, like she's probably weird, but like I, not to like blow smoke, like I got along with everyone. Like I was just kind of like that person who was just kind of like morphed into any group, and like I just got along with everyone. So when I saw Jeff, I was like, bro, like this dude,
That's
and of course
me.
like
You
he.
showed what was building up inside internally, and you
Mhm.
exposed it, and you said it's okay to be this way, and that's
Yeah.
amazing.
And so for me personally, Jeff was always my favorite. I mean, yes, I mean all the bullshit that's happened outside the ring, to the side. That's for me, just talking wrestling wise. Like he was my first real favorite, and of course, like Team Extreme and Lita was like all that's a whole other story. But dude, like you said, for me, like there, you can make an argument for a lot of people, right? But when you break down, like if you broke it down in categories, to me, it's a no brainer with Shawn Michaels. And I hear what people say about and Shawn or about Bret Hart and things like that. But man, like for me, like Shawn Michaels had everything. He had the promo, he had the in ring, he had, like you said, the selling. Like he's probably one of the all time greats at selling, just in and of itself. It,
Brilliant.
it's amazing what he can do, and the fact that if you look back on it, he, in a sense, well, I guess now if you add on his coaching career with NXT and what he's doing nowadays, but
There you
he
go.
essentially had two separate careers, and it's fascinating because dude fucking retired. What was it, 98, I believe, and then came back in
The first time,
2008.
yeah.
Yeah, and then
He
came,
took, yeah.
like you said, came back in 2002 and just had a monumental return. It was completely different. It was a born again, just born again, right?
Oh, that
And,
WrestleMania with
oh my
Undertaker.
god, dude,
Ooh,
oh
I'm gonna have to watch this after. I'm gonna have
bro,
to watch that
bro.
after this because monumental.
Oh my gosh. And I loved everything about it. Everything like when he had the inaugural elimination chamber match, when his heavyweight championship came back, and everything about it was just beautifully told. So, and shout out to Triple H, because Triple H was the perfect foil and the perfect heel for him to go against at that point. I think it was, I forget the exact pay-per-view, but they had a brutal last man standing match, I think it was. At
With him and
SummerSlam.
Triple H.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was when it was he wore the jeans and the wife beater.
Yes,
That
yes.
was like that was also another like retirement kind of match where
I
it was
think it was
like,
like he was just supposed to, it was supposed to be like a one off, but then like that's
oh,
like started like a whole nother like full
that
on.
was a gory, that was a hardcore match for sure.
Yes, yes, it was. But we will we can, you and I could talk forever about
Oh,
everything.
dude,
But
if we don't realize we're on a podcast and we have a
yeah,
limit, we
I
could
know.
do 4 hour
That's why I
episodes
said I
any
may
day.
end up chopping things up depending on how long we go, because
It's all good.
whatever. But we'll see how it goes. But so the whole thing started with the tweet, right? The Vince McMahon tweet. So I want to get your take, and you briefly mentioned it, the Tony Khan tweet. Tony Khan, and I got the timestamp earlier with Vince's tweet for a specific reason. Like I mentioned earlier, Vince sent out his official retirement tweet at 4:05 p.m. July 22nd, 2022, and Tony Khan, just Tony Khan, he tweeted out, quote, "Thanks to you wrestling fans and your great support of at AEW. I'm grateful to now be the longest tenured CEO in pro wrestling. Thank you very much to every single person who watches at AEW on TV. See you Friday night, hashtag AEW Rampage on TNT Drama at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central, all that good stuff tonight." And he sent that tweet out at 4:27 p.m. So 22 minutes after Vince sent out his retirement tweet. A lot of people in our little industry here, in our little world, everyone has an opinion. I mean, of course, on everything, but a lot of people were either one way or the other with Tony Khan's tweet and the timing of it and everything. A lot of people thought that, with the timing being the main thing, and then he just didn't need to go there. And then just the factual part of it as well. He's not the longest tenured CEO. That's, I believe, I think his name is something Brown. I don't have it written down here, but the CEO for Impact Wrestling.
is actually supposedly the longest tenured CEO. So, and then some people are like, yeah, fuck yeah, Tony, you did the right thing. Like, I'm here for you. So what do you think?
Like I said before, and like I say on Enter the Lab, is I try to take an objective, bipartisan opinion on things, and I try to be open. These are billionaires going back and forth. First of all, we cannot relate. We don't make more than a certain amount, and I'm not going to call out my income, I'm not going to call out your income or any of the listeners. We cannot relate to what these people go through on the daily basis, right? So we cannot also think we would do something differently in their shoes. Okay, that's out of the way. I hate it and I love it at the same time. And that's what I love about wrestling is I love feeling something. If you make me feel a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Tony Khan, he's young. He's new in the industry. He's gloating about a legend. The GOAT, not even the GOAT. It's like there is no other GOAT. It's like him. It's I didn't want to call him George Washington because there's been things called out on George Washington since, but he is the one of one. Vince McMahon. And he's taking advantage of a situation where he's leaving ungracefully, not on his own terms, and he took advantage as a joke to have fun. Let's get this going. And I love that. Young, and that's what probably Vince McMahon would have done 20 years ago if there was social media. Let's be honest.
Took the words right out of my fucking mouth.
I know right you. We've been talking. So you can't say, oh, I love Vince for being a man of men and like a boss and like egotistical and all these things that he's known for. And then you can't rip Tony Khan for doing similar. Was it right? Probably not. Probably he took advantage of a situation. But my other side is like, good for him. Like, good for him to be like, hey, this is what it is. People doubted me. When I started AEW, we don't know, when Ground Floor, when he was trying to find investors to invest in him or the company, there's plenty of people that said, nah, you won't last more than...
A lot of my friends who are diehard wrestling fans doubted AEW. I was one of two people out of like a group of 10, 11 of us who just didn't even give AEW the time of day. It took a while. So I'm sure there's people out there.
For the record, I look forward, and I've texted you the other day, I look forward to a Dynamite other than the Roman Reigns parts of SmackDown and something else, but like I look so forward to an AEW Dynamite. I watch 90% of that. Like I'll skip maybe one match, but I watch every promo, most of every match. As I DVR it, but Raw is hard to get through, and we'll maybe talk about this now or later because we got to keep this relationship going and these conversations going. But it's WWE it needs a little shock. It needs a little culture change, and we could all agree with that.
Yeah.
And Triple H in the new era, I think, will do that. And obviously the SummerSlam pay-per-view PLE. As you always mistakenly say.
I try.
I know it. It's okay. We all do it. But it needs a little shot in the arm. Anytime, you make a drastic change like they have, you need to make changes in a way, and you need to solidify a new era. I'm so excited for WWE, but that excitement will only go so far. It'll last maybe 2 weeks, 4 weeks. It'll come to a point where if they don't show me, and I'm going off a tangent, if they don't show me change, development, something I can look forward to every single week or month, they're going to lose me again. I'll probably still watch. I'll probably go to an event, but like AEW, I'm in more now because they're willing to do something that's a little awkward at times, a little different. I question, but it's like, oh, I've never seen this before.
And I'm going to put a pin in you really quick there because you bring up a really good point there. And for you who's someone, and correct me if I'm wrong, especially lately, like you mentioned earlier, it's really hard to watch WWE lately for the past X amount of years, especially Monday Night Raw. And I'm pretty sure I told you, they were just in Orlando. SmackDown was just in Orlando last week, maybe the week before for SmackDown. And I mean, granted, to their credit, they sold out. There were very limited seats left. I could have gone on StubHub, got paid a little bit extra, but gotten a pretty decent seat for not a crazy amount. And then there was cheap seats left, which is what I was debating on, because I was like, you know what, I'm not really pressed to go, but if I want to go last minute, I'll just buy a bullshit seat and just to go. You know what I mean? I looked at the lineup, and mind you, it took forever to find out the official preview for SmackDown. I was like, Jesus Christ, like, this is taking forever. Like, it was legit. Like, I got off of work at like 5:15 that day, and the lineup had just came out, and I had to check Twitter, and I'm like, this is
so bad.
This is ridiculous. Like, yeah. And I was like, you know what? Like, whatever. And it's like maybe 20 minutes from my house. Not far at all. So I didn't end up going. And
it's like me in high school trying to figure out, like, am I going to fail this test or am I going to, like, cheat and, like, get a C? Like, I'm figuring it out last minute. I'm not prepared. So are you. You're not prepared as well.
Right. So I was just like, fuck it. And then I was just like, fuck it. I'm just going to watch it at home. And I'm so thankful I saved my money, my $40-$50. It wasn't anything crazy. But, yeah. So I say that because I want to ask you, what time frame, as someone who is trying, and to your credit, giving them credit and giving them, especially with all the changes that's going on. And of course, I want to, maybe we can branch forward to Triple H being the new head of creative, taking his new official role and title back. But obviously with Vince completely being gone from all things WWE besides owning the majority share and stock value, which is just on the business aspect. But when it comes to creative and day-to-day business for WWE and what we see on TV, he's completely removed. And Triple H is now in that position in and of itself. So kind of a little bit of twofold. Obviously, your thoughts on Triple H and his direction going forward. But what I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on, and the question I wanted to ask you is, what time frame are you giving Triple H, the new regime, and WWE going forward? Because to me, if you guys listening haven't heard my previous pods, I am under the umbrella where I'm not going to give them, I'm not expecting anything. I wasn't expecting anything this week, first of all. I think if you were expecting anything this week, you're kind of foolish, and no offense if that was you, but I just have to call it like I see it. Like, if you're expecting something the very next day or the same night or whatever, you're just not going to get it, and you shouldn't, because that's WWE is too massive of a system. If we're talking AEW, maybe, but WWE is a machine, and you can't throw a major cog in the machine without having negative impact. And I think they've already had a lot of hits. So for me, I give them at least, I wouldn't be shocked to see something surprising happen at SummerSlam. And then maybe signs starting Monday, but I'm not really expecting anything major within like the next month or so. So I know that's a lot to throw at you, but what do you think about all of that?
So as I look at it, and you got to be, you got to be realistic. We all are, if you're listening to this, we're all wrestling fans. And if you listen to a podcast about wrestling, you're way more than just a fan. You're, you overconsume. And especially, if, no offense to both of us, if you're listening to us, you're a super, super fan.
You're next level.
I'm a nobody. I'm not saying you're a nobody, but I'm just saying, like, all right, I'm glad you said it. But at the end of the day, you're listening to people that aren't in the industry. We don't have the ins and outs. So you're just listening, and we appreciate you for listening. But you're listening because we care, and we're passionate, and I think we give a ground level opinion. The way I look at it is Clash at the Castle, September 3rd. Extreme Rules, October 8th. Crown Jewel, November 5th. And Crown Jewel is always that pay-per-view, PLE, is that's for Goldberg. That's for Undertaker. That's for Triple
Goldberg
H.
has one more match left still.
Yes. So I've already put him in possible returns and stuff in my notes, but how I judge Triple H is not in the short term, not in the micro, is in the macro. It's about to be August. Will he make impact in the next 2 weeks? Maybe, maybe not. But by January 1, if you don't feel, see, hear a difference, then we have a problem. We have a deeper problem than we thought we did. Where if January 1 comes by, which is supposed to be day 1 again, according to the pay-per-view, I'll give them to January 1. I'll give them to the, fresh year, fresh whatever, maybe contracts, whatever it is. If we don't feel and have it experience in, visually, then I don't have hope for this company. It's just another Disney. It's just another, please come buy our product. Please, you've been a fan for 20, 30 years. You're not going to leave us now. And that's not how you keep a business flowing. So my Triple H grace period is in the beginning of next year, 2023. I'll give them the next few months. Give me something to look forward to, whether it's individual superstar, quote unquote, development, whether it's match content. AEW, not to compare it, I love AEW's interview style backstage. They start, they say a bunch of things, they do a bunch of things, boom, cuts out, go, next. It's not dragged out. It's not, I'm introducing so-and-so. And then they come in, crowd goes wild. And this is what I'm going to do. And it's like a whole production. Like, stop making that 2 minutes. Make that 45 seconds.
Right.
You can make those 2-minute interviews 40, 30 seconds. I love what, what's his name? See, this is where I'm counting on you. Is the God. No, the dude that came from WWE, with
Chris Jericho?
I'm blowing it. Not the Russian,
Miro?
Yeah.
Miro?
Like, I love him. I love him in AEW. Like, his whole promo, the God thing, like, everything.
The Redeemer, yes.
The Redeemer. That's amazing. And guess what? It lasts 15, 20, 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. The Redeemer. Boom. Nothing flashy, nothing. And that's what the WWE needs. Less is more, bro. Less is always more. Exactly. So that's it. My advice to WWE and what we think is scale it back. Stop doing too much. Less is more. Oh my God, those Redeemer fucking promos are the best thing that he's ever done in his fucking career.
He's Miro and
Jesus Christ, they're so good.
They're fucking next level. And I have said multiple times on the unofficial WWE podcast with Mimi when I've done the review shows with her specifically that and I recorded one earlier with her today, so check that out for Dynamite this week. So that was pretty cool to reconnect with her. But Mira, we didn't get too much into it this week, but we have in past episodes. For me personally, and if you've listened to me anywhere, AEW has been brought up. I'm a fucking huge fan of Miro. Ever since the way he started off and debuted in AEW was kind of not great. With the whole best friend game with
very weird.
And yeah. I mean, it was fine, and he was the best friend, and he was the best man. That was his thing. Like he was the best man with the wedding.
Was so weird, right? Yeah, with the wedding and the dyed hair. I like the hair. I didn't mind that, but it was weird when I started watching AEW literally last June, I think, and I was like, this is weird. He's not like a character like that.
Yeah, so it was just kind of bizarre, but I think whatever it was, he was just getting that gaming portion of his character, I guess, out of his system. That's what I read, whatever. It doesn't really matter at this point, but what he's doing now and what he's been doing the past maybe year, some change, whenever he came back and pretty much the ending of that, it's just been next level. And I think that long story short, I don't think that he's going to be joining the House of Black or anything like that, but I love the storytelling with him, and I like what you said. This dude can have a 15, 20, 30, 45-second promo and fucking kill it, and you have the beginning, middle, and the end of everything that he needed to hit. It's like he was giving these 3 bullet points, and the dude, and Tony Khan was like, hey, you need to touch on these 3 topics, but you only have 15, 20 seconds. Give it your best shot. And he does. I don't know
He could
how.
never do that in WWE.
God,
He
no.
never had a 30-minute
Like,
promo
it
by
would,
himself that was quality.
no. You had to have whatever her name is, Sarah Schreiber, holding the mic, and no offense to her, but it's like, come on, it's just, I don't know.
Brilliant.
I'm not here for it. But I do kind of want to, this is completely kind of off topic, but you mentioned it earlier and I wrote it down. Or you didn't mention it specifically, but you had mentioned WCW and it sparked something in me. And I don't know if you've kind of been up to par on everything as of late, but what is your take with Eric Bischoff's opinion on AEW and Eric Bischoff's view of Tony Khan maybe not capitalizing on certain talent, specifically CM Punk, and thinking that CM Punk really hasn't been that much of a hit as he probably should have been. And or if you haven't heard anything from Eric Bischoff, we can just keep it short and sweet. But if you have, what are your thoughts on that? And do you think Eric is just talking shit just to remain relevant, as a lot of people are saying, or do you think he has a point and the business aspect and the business side of him is really coming from a place to help AEW, as what he says?
Great question. So first of all, to answer your, long story short, I don't know that quote. But while you're asking that question, I simply go to Twitter. I type in the name Eric Bischoff. And the first thing that pops up is the quote. AEW promos doesn't have, it says doesn't have no emotion, which is,
that's
English,
grammar.
not correct. Yeah, grammar. Or advance to the story. There is absolutely no connection to the audience. I told you I will continue to badmouth AEW. Can I get a job? Like, what the fuck? That's kind of weird. It's just words. There's no connection to the character or the audience, and just a waste of time. Your second part of your question was correct. Is he doing this just to be relevant? Yes, that's what everybody does. That's what the world we live in is. If you have a podcast, and that's why I take pride in Enter the Lab, and anything I do in the future is, we will never do anything to sound cool, to sound quote unquote different when it doesn't sound different. It's just for clicks. It's got to be genuine conversation. It's got to have something to back it up. I hate watching ESPN and all these things now that are on the main, because they're looking for streams. They're looking for clicks. They're looking for advertisement, which I get. Eric Bischoff, obviously, by that quote, is trying to be relevant, and we see it every single day. I haven't seen a good promo and creates emotion. That's not true. It's just simply not true. I've watched AEW now. It's officially been one full year, and I've seen better promos, not perfect storylines or anything like that. But I'm telling you unbiasedly, I'm looking forward to hitting play on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. versus Tuesday morning when I have it DVR'd for Raw and I can skip through most things. That says all you need to know about, at least my opinion. Not saying it's everybody else's out there, but I look forward to DVRing Raw and watching it on delay versus watching Dynamite. I want to watch Dynamite live because I feel like I missed out. Because I talk to people like you, I go on Twitter. The last week I told you I had to block you basically from Twitter because I was like, fuck, I can't even watch all the shit you're tweeting because it was I wanted to, I wasn't watching live. That's all for clout. That's all for clicks. And that's what makes his podcast be relevant, which I'll never be a part of. I'll never be a part of clickbait podcasts. That is a way to burn out very quickly.
Yeah, so, and this may be where we may differ a little bit.
I like that.
Yeah, me too. So, and I'm going to kind of get this out of the way first. I don't know why. So obviously we know Conrad Thompson at this point, and he's pretty much like the king of any type of wrestling podcast. He has, if you're a former owner or talent executive rather in the industry, you probably have a podcast with Conrad at this point. And shout out to and kudos to him because he fucking made an empire, and no shame on him. But for me, for whatever reason, I have always enjoyed Eric Bischoff's 83 weeks with Conrad.
And I'll be honest, I've never listened to that podcast, so
Okay. And
I'm speaking out of ignorance here.
No. And I appreciate you for saying that. So for me, and I listened to back in the day, like when it first started, I was listening to it more religiously and made it more appointment viewing than I have now as of late. But I don't know. For me, I definitely think some of the shit that he said is for clickbait. The one thing that he said in one of the episodes that really just stood out to me and really made me say, like, what the fuck, like, are you serious? Like that, you really can't believe that. He had said something about he had mentioned that WWE storylines were better than AEW storylines, and that the storyline with, and I'm not sure if you are that privy on it, was the storyline between Ezekiel and Kevin Owens, and the whole is Ezekiel really Elias and that shit. Eric said that was the most intriguing thing to him and the best storyline going on any show at that point. And granted, that was maybe a month or two ago at this point.
Yeah.
So not too terribly long ago, but not as of right this week. But that was just one thing that really stood out to me. That was the first thing, or not the first thing, but one of the things I was just like, really, dude, like, you're really just saying shit. And like you said, like, a lot of us do. A lot of us will clip certain things that we know will get more likes or more views. And for one stake or the other, because we all have something to promote at the end of the day, which he apparently is releasing a new book. So all this kind of makes sense. So whatever. And kudos to him. But I don't know, like, to me, like, I'm not an Eric Bischoff, like, hater or anything like that. I kind of respect his opinion. A lot of things I think he's kind of embellished recently, but I still find whatever he says kind of intriguing. And then, like I said, I haven't really been up to date with his podcast probably within like 6-8 months at this point, but the recent ones, you know, like his opinion on Vince and shit like that, I've tried to listen to at least like a few minutes of that. But the shit that he says about AEW, I think, is interesting because, of course, a lot of people compare AEW to WCW nowadays, right? With it being the closest thing to competition that WWE has. The fact that they're even on TNT and TBS to begin with, I think, is a pretty big deal. But we could do a whole nother show on that in and of itself. But I definitely just wanted to get your thoughts on Eric Bischoff really quick. But last thing before I throw it to you for any topics that you have is MJF, dude. I know you probably have a lot to say about MJF. We haven't heard from MJF since, yes, of course, me too. We haven't heard from him since, obviously, way before Forbidden Door. I believe the last we heard from him was the Dynamite directly after the pay-per-view where he put over Wardlow. And I'm curious your thoughts really quick on Wardlow somewhere in there as well. And then him being the champion at this point and just really doing nothing as of late. And then you could say anything you want else on AEW, and we can definitely hit on AEW topics before we get to the card itself. But, dude, I really want to talk to you about MJF, though, because I know you have a lot to say about MJF.
MJF is the reason why I've overly consumed AEW. If MJF didn't exist, I don't think I give AEW a chance. Maybe I give AEW a chance because of Chris Jericho, maybe because of Jon Moxley, but MJF a year and a half ago, I'm talking before I like started to get into the characters, was like, who is this pretentious motherfucker? Like, I loved it. Like, who? Like, the first one of the first memories was during the Donald Trump like election, how they did the whole like presidential like.
He was challenging Mox, yes.
Yeah, and I didn't know what was going on. I just tuned in one time. I was like, who is this guy acting like he's Donald Trump? And at that time, it's polarizing, whether you like, and we're not here to talk politics, but it was...
Whatever side you're on, it's gonna grab you.
Oh, yeah, I was just like, who the fuck is this guy? And then I learned that, like, okay, I get the flow of him, and Wardlow is like the bodyguard, but also like enough to fuck him up, but he's not gonna fuck him up. Mm-hmm. And that was intriguing to me, and that what lured me into the AEW landscape was those promos. And man, has he he's why I stuck around was, Bree, my fiance, I introduced her.
Great.
Yeah, shout out. Was every time, every time it was just like I would turn that fucking shit up all the way in the lab, and I'd just be like, dude, I love this motherfucker. Like he's everything I hate in a human, and that's why I love him. Like everything and that's what wrestling is. It grabs you. It's polarizing. Like I hate this person so much, I'm gonna watch him for like 20 minutes. And, after that phenomenal promo that he did to TK, Tony Khan, to the industry, it was monumental. I think he's 24, 25 years old.
Yeah, I think he's like 25, 26 now.
He is to relate it to sports again, he is a guy like LeBron James, like a Shohei Ohtani. If you watch baseball, he's a guy in his prime that just has the industry by the balls. Meaning, your industry doesn't grow without me. It's polarizing. Meaning, if I'm on your team and we go to the moon, you're gonna make so much more money. And I think that now looking back at it, at first I thought it was like a gimmick, a promo. Now time's gone on where it's been 1 or 2 months where it's like, oh shit, I think there's something deeper than this. He might be negotiating. Man, this guy is not only young. Oh my God. He's an amazing promo. I'm not saying he's a world-class wrestler because at the end of the day, let's be honest, in the 90s, it didn't matter if your wrestling matches were quality. It mattered about the storyline, the pop, the ending, your finisher. It was all about that. And then the actual wrestling was like, okay, cool. I watched a couple guys get into it for like 20 minutes. But like, he can control a room, an arena, an entire telecast. And man, I'm fucking all in on that Burberry prick. He's amazing. He is really amazing. And I don't hope he goes to WWE just for the sake, but I hope he finds a situation, whether it's AEW or WWE, where he's comfortable. He could be himself. Obviously, WWE being TV 14 helps in his regard because he could be a little bit himself. But man, that man on the mic, I've watched his promos back to back easily all the time because he's lethal on the mic. He went one-on-one with CM Punk, Chris Jericho, all these great epic stars. And there's nobody in WWE that like could really challenge him. So it's like he could own the entire mic situation on WWE.
Yeah, and he's held his own with every wrestler he's been in the ring with. And if you think about it, he's feuded with John Moxley, Chris Jericho, CM Punk.
Everybody.
He made Wardlow. Yeah, so
made Wardlow. Like we don't love Wardlow unless this man disrespects this guy every single week.
Yeah. He and all the shit that he put Wardlow through for Wardlow to finally get his comeuppance and that monumental victory at the pay-per-view. And granted, yes, now he's won the TNT championship. We really haven't seen him much since, but that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. But it's just fascinating, all the shit and when you really look at his biggest rivalries, they've been with wrestlers and superstars who have been in the industry for decades at this point. And dude is like you said, 24, 25, 26 at this point. I think he just turned 26 recently this year. So when he started in AEW, he was just turning 24-ish, around that. So stupid young, right? So when you think of 24, to me, you think of like Randy Orton when he was 24. I believe that was the age when he won his first World Heavyweight Championship. And he's gone on record saying that he was too young to win the championship and to be in that position at that age. And to really compare the two, I mean, that's a whole other pod in and of itself. But MJF is just on another level. You know what I mean? And I wanted to bring up MJF because I was kind of curious, like what you thought with the whole shift in really power with WWE, with obviously Stephanie and Nick Khan being so co-CEOs, but with Triple H being the head of creative. Do you think that's more enticing for someone specifically like MJF? It's kind of hard to put a blanket statement on talent in general, but specifically since we're talking about him, MJF, really quick. Do you think he's more likely to sign with WWE now since Triple H is head of creative, or do you think he's more likely to stay with AEW? Because obviously he knows what he has with AEW, but yes, the grass isn't always greener on the other side, but I mean, the grass is still green, it just it just depends on how green you make it a lot of times. So I don't know. What do you think?
Inspiration. I like that. If you were to, when I realized that the promo wasn't, it was a work, it was also a shoot. You could argue back and forth, like whatever it was. When I was watching it live, I was like, this is a fucking amazing promo. Like, holy shit. Whether it's a work or a shoot, doesn't matter. But then as time went on, and I was like, oh, he's not even on TV anymore. So that was a mix. Now, back then, I would have been like, all right, he comes back to AEW. He makes a whole gimmick out of this. He makes a whole, pay-per-view out of it. But now that time's gone on, and time is a beautiful thing in business.
Yeah.
And as I get older, whether it's it doesn't matter WWE. It doesn't matter. I'm invested in real estate right now, or I'm invested in whatever I am. Time is a beautiful thing, where all of a sudden, the more time, days, weeks, months go on, you start to have more options, especially if you're in a position of power, which he is in. He's young. He could wrestle. He could spit on the mic. The more days that go by, he's in more position of power. So now that Vince McMahon has stepped down, Triple H kind of is willing to maybe make a spark, maybe make a little splash. This question 2 weeks ago, I probably would have framed it differently. Now that you ask me in real life time, I could see MJF coming to WWE like SummerSlam. Like, I don't know. I don't know what goes beyond. Obviously, that's not realistic because contract-wise. But who's to say WWE doesn't buy him out or whatever? But if it doesn't go that way, I could see him coming back or coming into WWE for WrestleMania or whatever the contract and buying him out. I could see that happening more and more as every day and week and month go by. And I'm excited about that because TV 14 helps. It really helps him because he could be restrained, but he would have to have some guidance. But you have to let somebody like that go a little bit. Like me, you know, in any sales position I've been in, podcast, you have to let me go a little bit because if I'm overthinking what I'm saying, you don't have value there as a business. Right. So somebody like him, he's going to make mistakes, which, I mean, that's what the WWE was built on, right? Mistakes. Like, oh shit, we weren't supposed to do that. We weren't supposed to say that, but it worked. Like, that's what wrestling is. It's a lot of planning and thought out things, but it's like when it goes wrong or right, it's like, oh, thank God that went this way.
Absolutely.
So that's my opinion. It's like there's so much time and preparation thought about every like nuance of whether it's wrestling or promos, but it's like the most genuine things is mistakes or just a catchphrase like "Who's your daddy?" What we saw on like it could have been a mistake, and that was the connection with New York and Theory and Roman. But it's like sometimes a genuine like just saying things is like, oh shit, I didn't think that was gonna work.
Yeah, and that comes into play in kind of with my last topic here, and then I'll officially throw it to you before we get into the SummerSlam card. But the TV 14 rating going forward, we don't officially know when that's going to be green flag, right? And all
we would think after SummerSlam.
Yeah, there was reporting it was going to be that official Monday after the initial news was broke, but obviously that wasn't really going to be a for sure thing. And I think the news was actually broke prematurely in that respect, but that is something that's on the burner, and they're just waiting to kind of get that ready. I definitely think obviously your characters like your MJF, right, is your obvious standout who would benefit the most for a rating like that. But in a lot of regards, like I don't know. Yes, MJF would benefit very well from the freedom, but in a lot of respects too, I think it would be kind of cool to see him in some type of constraints and to see when he's like when he can't say shit,
Good
when
point.
he can't say bitch, when he can't say fuck,
Be
have
a
it
little
bleeped out.
creative. I like that.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
when he's really put inside of not a sealed box.
Totally,
Not
yeah.
a sealed box, but a box that's like, all right, bro, like one side is closed off, like you can't say all this stuff, but you have to be mindful of what you're saying, but you have a little bit of leeway, maybe a little bit more than someone else, whether that's really fair or not. But
to cut you off, there's times in AEW where I know the word bitch is coming. Like, I just feel it. And it's like, all right, you just said that 2 seconds ago. Like, da-da-da-da-da, bitch. It's like, all right, I seen that coming. So you're right in that regard. Like, there's times where it's like almost too predictable.
Yeah. And I think like this week, for instance, with Jungle Boy saying the word pussy, it's like wow.
That was
like,
phenomenal.
Yeah.
That was phenomenal. I text you right away. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, like with certain characters, like certain things work, and when it's not, like, okay, like of course, like he's gonna say shit every week, right? Like it's kind of like not even that big of a deal at this point. But I think it's gonna be more intriguing for someone like an MJF to be in a WWE world, and he doesn't have to stay there forever. Homeboy can be there for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Granted, I think if WWE is gonna pay him a substantial amount of money, they're gonna want him for at least 3 years, and rightfully so. But that's a whole other. That's a year and a half ish out from now. But really quick, your thoughts on the TV14 rating, and then anything else you have on your list before we get into SummerSlam, the card itself.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. TV14, I think, like I said, with Triple H, I think he's the it's perfect how it happened. Everything happens in business or in life how it should. It's not ironic, but also ironic that the TV14 makes a change over the last 15 years that it's changed. Vince McMahon is out, then Triple H, who created basically, rated R, in the 90s and early 2000s. Like, he was the one to keep it always going with DX and all that. Like, that's why I always say it's like everything worked out the way it should be. Everything worked out the way it should be, where there's still a McMahon at helm, and not Helmsley, but pun intended. You see what I did there?
You did there.
Yeah. So Stephanie is still a McMahon, and she is running it. But Triple H, which has the respect of the business, the respect of the wrestler, both sides of it, is running it, and that's how it should be. It's perfect timing. Sometimes it's like, it's weird where we talked about like, oh, Vince didn't get the goodbye that he always wanted. Good. Fine. This shit was writing itself out to be like, let's move on already. So Triple H, let's move on. And I'm so excited to see what's, in the forefront of WWE.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man, 100%. Do you have anything that you have written down that you want to touch base on before we dive into the official card itself? And what do you think about the Saturday pay-per-views too?
Yeah, I think everything I have going forward has to do with every matchup that we have going forward. So,
right on,
I have a little notes on everything. I think we covered everything from McMahon and Triple H, and what we could, go to 3 hours to 2 hours, I think is the main thing. And that has to do with profit. If they make a lot of money
for Raw, you're saying?
Yeah, for Raw. If they make a lot of money in the third hour that we don't know about, they're going to keep it.
I think that the main thing is advertising there. Yeah, like you were saying.
That's very simple. Like, if they make a lot of money in the third hour or a good amount of money in the third hour, they're not going to cut it. Like, that's plain and simple. They're not going to be like, oh, wait, we want quality over quantity. They're just going to keep it and, like, hope to improve the quantity, but they're not going to cut a third hour if it makes them money. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and like you sent me that clip with Triple H. I think, and to be fair, I think Vince probably would have wanted to go back to 2 hours as well because it's easier for him. It's easier for his staff. It's less time they have to stay at the arena. It's more time that they can be traveling back home, wherever the fuck he wants to go, whether doesn't matter. Wherever he wants to be, it's 1 hour less at the arena, right? So I'm not in the camp where I'm said that WWE is like their flag is in the 3 hour camp. I think they were probably approached by USA. They were probably like, yo, we'll give you X amount of money to go 3 hours. You'll get X amount of money from advertisers. You'll have this, and this opportunity. So from a business standpoint, yeah, it was probably a no-brainer. And we're what, 10 years on 3 hours at this point, or if not 10 years, close to it. At this point, it still amazes me how much shit I can get done in the span of a 1 hour, one Raw episode. Like the 3 hours, like, dude, like I can fucking do like 2 loads of laundry. I can run to Walmart.
Yeah.
I can DoorDash if I want to.
I can't watch Raw live anymore. I have to DVR it and skip through it.
God, and like especially lately with everything changing, and then we'll get into the car. Like I've really tried, but it's just like once you turn over into that third hour, it's just like, God damn, we still have a whole nother fucking hour of this shit. And it could be a really good, solid show, and I could really be enjoying those 2 hours. And once those 2 hours ends, I could be like, yeah, like that was a really good Raw. And then it's like, oh shit, like we still have the main event is still a whole other hour and some change. Like when they were going over, like when they were going at like to 11:05, 11:10, 11:15, that was fucking insane. Like
remember that? Like you would look for it used to end at 11:01
like
and it was like that. Yeah, that extra 1 minute used to be the thing. Like, oh wait, Raw doesn't end at 11. It ends at 11:01. That extra minute used to be something back in the day.
Yeah,
and dude, yeah, I feel like they're adding. They could cut down on interviews. They could cut down on promos, they recap so much. They recap. Let's show you what happened last week on Raw. Let's show you what happened last week on SmackDown. Let's show you what happened on Sunday with the PLE. It's like you're if you break it down, they're wasting a lot of fucking time.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Yeah, and in some respects, I like a good replay, but in a lot of respects too, it's like I don't need a replay of something I literally just saw 3 minutes before the ad.
Literally.
Like, I promise you, if I was here, like I didn't just now tune in, and if I did, I'll be able to figure out what the fuck just happened. You know what I mean? But I say that in a lot of respects because I think that's maybe one downfall for AEW, and not to get into that boat too much right now, but I think they could fare for a lot more breathing room, a lot more recap, a lot more, hey, our fucking Forbidden Door pay-per-view just happened. Here are the results from that. This is what just happened at our Ring of Honor pay-per-view. And oh, by the way, one of the members of our Bullet Club, our Blackpool Combat Club, you know, who just fucking won the world title is now in Ring of Honor. So I just think that there's a happy medium there, but definitely not something that would warrant a whole nother hour. But that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. So we will get into the SummerSlam card in and of itself. Do you have anything else you want to hit on, or are you ready to go?
No, I think everything that I have to say opinion-wise.
All right, guys, and that is officially the end of the second part of the interview with Elvis Escobar. Again, thank you guys so much for listening, downloading, streaming, whatever you're doing to support the pod. I truly appreciate it. Like I said before, and always, it's really cool to see the podcast grow. So I appreciate the love and all the support from you guys. But until next time, guys, have a fantastic week. Take care.